You deserve to be happy in your career, in all aspects of your life. But we're going to be talking about how you can be happy in your career. The world accepts mediocrity, but that doesn't mean you have to. And my guest today is here to help you rise above that norm of mediocrity, to recover from the life and career situations that have harmed all of us on all sorts of different levels and broken your confidence. And we're going to show you how you can achieve your true worth personally and professionally starting right now. My guest today is an award-winning certified professional career resume writer and certified professional career coach. She's accredited through the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches. She's also the recipient of the 2022 Top Coach of the Americas presented by Coach Awards and Go Master Coach. I'm so excited to have Angie Callen joining us today. How are you doing, Angie?
I am doing well, Scott. Thanks for having me. Thanks for a great little intro there. I love what you picked at the beginning about, the mediocrity and people being happy in their careers, because that's what I get really excited to talk about. So thanks for having me.
No, I'm glad to have you. I spent 20 years as a grocery store manager up in Canada, and I managed stores that had like 50 employees. I managed stores that had 300 employees. And my favorite store was in a small town of about 13,000 people in northern British Columbia called Prince Rupert. And we had like 34 employees. And it was insane because the fishing fleets and the tourists came in June, July, and August. And this little store had like 12 checkouts, and they would be lined to the back. And they never hired anybody because they figured, oh, well, it's only busy for a few months, and then we have to lay them off, and that's really sad. And I was like, you guys are working like 60-hour weeks for 3 months. You're burnt out. You're miserable. You're ready to kill each other. We're not doing this again. Because I got there like June 1st, and I had to just go with the flow for that first year. And so we ended up hiring, with 34 employees, we ended up hiring 21 in like May and June to get ready for June, July, and August. And halfway through the summer, hired another 10 or something. And we just threw these poor people to the wolves. But, it was exciting. Like you'd have, I'd be walking out the exit, and this lady would be walking in, and a customer's walking out. Of course, it's 13,000 people. Everybody knows everybody. And the person leaving said, don't go in. It's a madhouse. And the person coming in, they would perk up and get all excited. Oh, what's going on? But that second year, when we had all those employees, everyone was able to take their weekends off and take their time off and have a vacation. And they just it was totally, totally different. And what I remember the most about that store was I had 3 employees that were they were guys, and they were in their mid-20s, and they were like the backbone of the store. But this was a store where a store manager would come in for 2 or 3 years and leave, because Prince Rupert was not a hot spot. I loved it, but it was not a hot spot. And its claim to fame is in 365 days of the year, 300 days with poor rain. So you can understand why, people didn't want to stay there. But the managers all told these 3 guys, work really hard and I'll help you get promoted, because they all wanted to be promoted. And none of them did. It was just like, we're going to tell you what you need to hear to be, so I can get into this place, get out of it in a couple of years, and get on with my life. So one of my most proudest things about being a store manager was the fact that in 3 years I promoted all 3 of those guys to assistant managers, and the store never suffered, because everyone's saying they know what they're doing and nobody else does. It's like, you can't leave until you teach somebody what you know, and it worked out really good. So your whole thing about enjoying, your work and working and being happy in that is really important to me.
Well, I think this is couple funny anecdotes to that story, Scott. First, my first job ever was in a grocery store when I was 16 years old. And
Yay!
and I actually live in the mountain equivalent of Prince Rupert. So I live outside of Aspen, Colorado, a community. It's a county of 13,000 people with a very like seasonal flow to the workforce. And so
Neat.
it's funny what you said about like, it's like feast or famine. You're like 3 months on, 3 months off, 3 months on, 3 months off. If you're in the kind of like tourist driven
Right.
market, not
Right.
what I serve as a career coach, but it was just funny because I was sitting there going, my husband who used to be in hospitality, that was our life when that was the case. But
Right.
what I love about bringing it back to that idea of like being satisfied is we are at a really challenging point in career satisfaction across the market. I was listening to a story just yesterday about how it was part of the marketplace report about how 4 in 10 staff wouldn't want their worst enemy to have their job. I feel like that's like the worst thing you could possibly say about
4
your
in
career.
10.
40%
Wow.
of people would not put their job on their worst enemy. And that's very eye-opening to me. And a lot of it is because of what's happened for the last 2.5 years and the level of expectations put on people and everything like that. But we have another wave of career dissatisfaction that's kind of hitting all corners of the market. And I think it's really important for people to feel empowered and have the resources they need to move beyond that because, as we talk a little bit about the InfoStack, Women in Confidence and career package, that's about your whole well-being. Careers are a huge component of your overall well-being. And I think that we're very good at kind of downplaying that and not
It's half
really.
your day.
It's you spend more time doing your work than you do anything else, including sleeping.
Right. So are you saying, Angie, that job dissatisfaction was not as high before the pandemic as it is now?
It almost wasn't as extreme, I would say. So
Okay.
4 or 5 years ago, the statistic was something like 70% of people did not like their job on some level. What wasn't there was this statistic of disdain. I'm going to call it like 40% of people wouldn't want their worst enemy to take on their job. Like it basically means that 40% of people are just going to hell every day. And so that level of dissatisfaction didn't exist. And then what's really interesting is there was a 2-year period where job satisfaction actually increased. And we were in like that 70% statistic became like 50% of people were, more than half of people were satisfied with their job instead of the majority not. And that was in the 2.5 years of the pandemic when people had flexibility, autonomy, and work from home. And now people are being forced to undo that lifestyle that they've had for 2.5 years. And that is causing a lot of unrest around, what everybody was willing to do for 2.5 years. And now you expect me to just like not do that, and the level of expectation that comes with that. So we've kind of like returned to the before days, but with a level of greater intensity around what isn't working.
Right. So what do you think isn't working?
What do I think is working or is not working?
Is not working, because this is something that's it's not just grocery stores, right? Or it's not just your corner barber. It's everything.
Oh yeah, including all the way up to CEOs. CEO job satisfaction dropped 15% in the last year alone. And so this is all the way from the top down to the bottom. And I think a lot of it is rooted in, I'm going to actually use the word respect, because, for 2.5 to 3 years of a pandemic, people out there did whatever they needed to do to manage job and life at the same time. And people were able to do it and do it well and probably do it better with the flexibility and autonomy and ability to kind of like work from home and everything. And now employers are like, too bad. We don't have respect for what you did for us for the last 2.5 years. We got to go back to the way it was. And as a business owner, I also understand that they have facilities they pay for, and there's costs, and there's the perception that you're more productive if you're in an office and you can be micromanaged and watched. But all of that doesn't really fly anymore. And I think there's an added element to like post-pandemic work styles that also has to do with generational shift happening in the workforce as well.
Wow.
Because for the first time ever, we have 5 generations in the workforce, and all 5 of those generations have extremely different work ethics, drivers, motivators, and all the things. Right. And as millennials come up into middle management and grow, and Gen Z comes on the scene, they have different motivators than like we Gen Xers and kind of like the 40 plus
baby boomers
does. And we have to figure out how to shift and adapt the work environment to compensate for what they want.
And I think one of the terms you used is really a key one, and that was the micromanage, right? It's kind of like, it's kind of funny when I think about it, right? It's like you're asking me to work at home. So in other words, I'm going to have a workspace at home that you're not paying for, I'm paying for, right? You're going to be able to contact me at like 11 in the evening because, my work is at home. And so part of me thinks, well, I should go sit in the office. But the other side of it is there's a lot of advantages to working at home, like one of it being if I get the work done, I don't have someone, standing behind me as I'm trying to do my work, watching me, which I personally just cannot stand. And I can imagine people that are, have different values than us baby boomers would dislike it even more. And then there's also this sort of trust thing going on, like, is the person actually doing work while they're working? And it kind of reminds me, there was a time when I left the grocery chain, I didn't go get another job or start a business right away. I took off for 3 months with my 2 young children and my wife and ran around southwestern United States for 3 months. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, we have to do education because it's the school year. And so the school was really great. They just said, here's a bunch of books. This is what he needs to learn. Here are the tests. And so I would homeschool my son. And he would go to school for like 6 or 7 hours, and we would take an hour and a half to do all the work he was doing in 6 and 7 hours, right? Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes there's this, if I'm not very productive at work, but that's the standard, great. But if I'm at home, I could be like 3 times more productive, and that means that I have 4 hours that I can do whatever I want with, right? So you kind of get into like what is fair for the employee and what is fair for the employer.
Well, it's proven that if you're able to work, it's proven that you're more productive when you're allowed to kind of like design your own schedule and work at the hours that are most productive for you. Not everybody has the same circadian rhythm and the same, kind of power times of day. And one of the nice things about having that remote work is you had some flexibility around the ability to work at your better times, maybe. But there are also trade-offs of that, is then you might end up working for 12 hours, except for that like 2 hours of that you were maybe like running errands because it's not your prime time. So it's really interesting. But from a candidate perspective and in working with people who are out there job searching, there is a bigger drive than ever for like culture alignment, I would say. So
cool.
I've had my business for 5 years, and in the last year to year and a half, that has been even a bigger motivator, a bigger driver than I've ever seen, where people are really like, I want to work for a culture that aligns with my values. I want to work in an environment that's going to support me and the lifestyle that I want, whether that is fully remote work or whether that's somebody that wants to be hybrid because they like to be around people 2 days a week, but want the flexibility to not if they don't want to, you know what I mean? So there's definitely a lot more awareness on the candidate side around kind of what those life parameters are going to be or what those basic needs are, and then really being intentional about finding an employment culture that's going to support and align with that.
So are there any companies that think about this?
Well, that's what's so interesting.
Never thought about it.
They really should. So, and I think that what is really interesting about the landscape that we're in right now from a hiring perspective is, okay, there's some layoffs and things out there happening, but by and large, we have shifted into, I'm going to say, an equal power dynamic as far as like candidates driving the hiring process versus hiring managers or companies driving a hiring process, there's kind of equal push and pull there, where from like 2015 until through the first year of the pandemic, it was very company focused, and we just had to do whatever we had to do for the companies. But like candidates have taken back some of that power now. And I think it's very short sighted for companies who aren't trying to figure out how to adapt to it, because they're not going to be able to attract and attain top talent if they don't figure out how to adjust to kind of like a new norm and give people options.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking, oh, we have a mission statement. Yeah, if that's all you've got,
Great for you.
good for you. Yeah. These are our values. Yeah, like there's nothing there that says I can stay home for 3 days if I really want to stay home and I don't want to fight the traffic, right? I mean, when you think about it, like in Vancouver, where I'm from, rush hour starts at 4 a.m. and it ends at about 11:30 at night. In other words, the streets are full. This is the Vancouver Traffic Authority that put this out. And that means basically that, if there was no traffic, it's a 10-minute drive, but in rush hour, it's an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Let's say
And that's not productive for anyone.
No, so I mean, when I left my job, I started my own business, and my own business is wherever I want to be. And so when I do get out every once in a while during rush hour and I see these like 10 miles of cars moving at 4 miles an hour, I'm like, why are you doing that? Like that, and my grocery store, my grocery chain, what they would do, by the way, is if you lived in community A, you worked at store B that was like 10 miles away. Like, even though around the corner there was a store, right? Now, if you were a cashier or a part-time clerk, it'd be a little different. But if you were full-time, they moved everybody around. And it was just, and the management in particular, all moved around. So they for sure, like I know there was a group of 5 store managers that would go to the pub on this side of the bridge, and they'd all meet there every day and have 3 or 4 or 10 beer. And they would wait from when they got off around 6 till 8 o'clock when the traffic was like moving, because at this point it was a lot less at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, at that point you beat yourself home.
Yeah, at that point you would beat yourself home if you were doing it the other way, right? And so it's like they're at work at 6:37 in the morning. They finish getting drunk at 8 o'clock at night, and like kids, no wonder, kids are on drugs and all the rest of it, and people are getting divorced. Like, what sort of life is it? So what you're telling me is people who are looking for a job are looking for a life in addition to the job. They're not willing to sacrifice everything just to get a paycheck.
And I think, yes, and I hope more people are doing that, is kind of a little bit of my message. It's funny because things always like come full circle. And I've always kind of had this, so I started my career as an engineer living in downtown Boston. And so I was kind of part of that, there's traffic from 4 a.m. to 11 p.m. Let's call it the rat race kind of thing. And then I left there and moved to the resort area of Colorado. And I remember people saying to me like, oh my gosh, that's my dream. I want to go live in, I'm going to go be an employed ski bum is basically what I am. And people used to say to me, oh, that's my dream. I want to do it. And I remember just thinking, well, you could do it too. But there's so many reasons that we don't do these kinds of things. Risk aversion, or the golden handcuffs, or responsibility, and all these reasons that we can't. And I think it's really important to stop and look at like, what do I want out of life and how does my career fit into it? That's a really big perspective that I bring to my coaching. Even with a client who's like, I just want a different job, I make them sit down and tell me why they want a different job, and to talk about those missions and values. And if you're out there interviewing, one of the best things that you could do if you want a valued aligned culture is go look at those values on a website and then ask the people you're interviewing how they see them being played out in the work day and in the work environment, because then you'll know whether they're just text on a website or whether they're truly values ingrained into a culture.
Yeah.
But I
How did
think
they
that
apply it?
exactly, is it being applied? And I think it's just, I think my message in inspiring confident professionals and helping people craft really intentional job searches and career plans that support life is that you have permission to do that. You know, everything has shifted so much that we don't stay in jobs for 30 years. You don't have to just go make money and go home and die, which is, I think, was a mentality of years before, of just like work was this necessary
It
evil.
was
And
it
now
was a
it's such a huge part. It is such a huge part of our life. All of that needs to be designed and kind of live in a little bit of a harmonious ecosystem.
yeah. My parents' generation, that was definitely it. It was, you work 40 years for a company, you get the golden handshake, you have a nice retirement. And I know some people that did, and I know some people that a week after they retired, they died. There was no health issues. They just, I'm not working, I'm not worth anything, and they just, off they went. So, um, and that was certainly something that when I mean, I worked part time at this grocery chain, going through high school and university, and then when I graduated, they said, "Well, you want to get into management?" I said, "Okay," because I never thought at any point in time of there was something other than the grocery chain for me to work at. And it took
Mm-hmm.
me 20 years to go and say, "Wow, like these people are not living a very good life, and I don't want to be like them."
I don't want that for me. Yeah.
Don't want that for me. And so what, so let's just talk about the job search. Like, because one of the things that I hear from some of my peers is there's no, like in construction, there's no one to, you can't find anybody that can swing a hammer or is willing to swing a hammer. And, so it seems like there are certain industries where there's no work. I mean, 2 years ago there was lots. Whoops, and I'm hoping that nothing happened to those people. So either they stopped for a while, or they found something else to do during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. There's been, so it's interesting because if you look at like unemployment and job seeking statistics, I think it's like there's 2 jobs for every 1 job seeker, but there is a huge disparity in the category of jobs open and the job seeker. And so at the professional level, things are still very, very competitive. That's where I focus. Most of my coaching is kind of mid-career through executives, really designing that lifestyle component. But at that, do we call it kind of like trade, service, and industry level, there has a lot of those people during the pandemic left and found other things to do. Education is a really great example of what's happening and the shifts that are going on there. Like teachers here in the US are exiting the classroom at very alarming rates because they want to go do something else. And that is an industry that shifted so much. People want to go elsewhere into kind of a more balanced career. But then you also have things like the construction industry, which is a funny thing to bring up, Scott, because I was a civil engineer and worked in construction, just saw such an increase in demand because of construction that now it's like we don't, like, there's just a gap in the labor force. And so it's created a really interesting dynamic of kind of where and how people want to work and then where the need is, and there being a gap there. And I don't necessarily know how we're going to bridge it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, yeah, I think one of the things before the pandemic was, how am I going to live if I don't have my job? And then the pandemic hit and nobody had a job and they lived. So now it's kind of like,
Yep.
my paradigm is totally gone because, hey, I'm still here and I really haven't done any work. Now, I got lots of money from the government, maybe, but I can spend some time thinking about doing something else. And this is like the world's biggest Monday morning, right? Like everyone's like, "Oh my God, I hate Mondays. I don't want to go to work." Well, you just had like this huge 2-year Sunday, and now it's like, I really don't want to go to work.
You get brownie points for teeing up a shameless plug that I have a podcast called No More Mondays. So that was perfect. But
Okay, now you have to tell everybody that you never told me that before I said what I said.
I did not tell you that before.
No, you didn't. I didn't know that.
I know. That was perfect. But you're absolutely right. And what's interesting about times of crisis, whether it was like that global pandemic, recessions, economic downturns, innovation increases during those times because we are forced as humans to be more resourceful. And that happens at a company level. Uber and Pinterest came out of the Great Recession in '08, for instance. And who knows what's going to come out of the 20 to 22 years. Like that remains to be seen. There's definitely some forward progress in a lot of areas, but I think that also drills down to an individual level. So all of those people that their industries just shut down, they were like, I got to go figure out how to make a living because I don't know how long this is going to last. They became innovative and resourceful and moved on to other things and continued to do them. So it kind of like it shifted the labor force into different areas of the labor market.
Very cool. That's a really good way to sum that up. Okay, so one of the reasons that we're together is because there is a super stack, and I'm going to show a quick video. And so you're a part of the
We're in it.
You're in it.
Yeah.
And so you have a product, which is this one. And so I think this might be a good time for you to tell us a little bit about the complete guide to strategize your job search.
Yeah. So you've heard a little bit of kind of what's in this preview, as Scott and I have talked already, but this kind of ultimate guide or complete guide is really a similar framework as to what I follow with all of my one-on-one coaching clients as we job search. So it's a very kind of intentional and comprehensive way to step by step plan a very strategic job search. So when you decide you want to leave a company or you get laid off or whatever circumstance create that time for the next step, it's really easy to just be like, okay, I'm going to go to Indeed or I'm going to go to LinkedIn. I'm just going to start applying like mad without stopping and really having that intention around, what career you want, what's the logical next step. And so this guide is really designed to help you create that strategy for an intentional next step, kind of no matter what level of career or what field you're in. It's kind of almost universal. But really sit down, think about what you want, and then all the tools and resources you need to kind of execute on that strategy, even down to how to ask questions in an interview, like I mentioned earlier, to make sure it's a fit and it's aligned with those goals that you set. So it is an ebook of start to finish resources to help you not only strategize your next job search, but also take the intentional steps to landing in the right next spot.
Awesome. I'm really excited to get in and read it. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing and change a lot of people's lives because things are a lot different now than they were just a few short years ago. And the Super Stack is only available until I think the Tuesday after Black Friday. So this is
it's definitely like a Black Friday, Cyber Monday buy. So grab it. I got to sneak peek of what's in it, and it's amazing, and it has that well-roundedness that we talked about. And I know at least my part of it isn't only specific to women. A lot of it is a women's confidence and kind of career super stack. But it's also cool stocking stuffer, I think. So if you're a dude out there looking for something good for the woman in your life, there's probably something in there for them.
Absolutely. And we always want to be improving. I mean, the idea of constant improvement, be a little bit better today than you were yesterday. And when you get access to a coach like yourself, Angie, it makes a huge difference in people's lives.
I mean, this is what's the saying? Like, if you stop learning, you're dying. And I think that we can all grow in a way. You actually said something earlier that I was going to talk about this anyway, so it's perfect to come back to it. Is we all have different definitions of growth and what development looks like. And I think knowing yours is important to then creating a job search strategy, creating a career plan, creating a life that kind of aligns with all of that. And this idea of like, if you're not growing, you're dying. Well, that growth can be whatever you want it to be. That could be learning new knowledge. That could be growing up a ladder. That could be growing in a physical activity that you want to become better in, kind of whatever it is. But I think it's really important to allow yourself the resources, and you invest a little bit in yourself every year towards this kind of development. And what like really genuinely what excites me to be part of something like this is that like this is why I do what I do, and this is the best thing I've ever done, is to get to support people in this way. And yeah, so I think it's a cool product, but just personally, it's a very rewarding thing to be able to boost people's confidence and give them the resources to put themselves in a better spot and not be mediocre.
There's nothing better than being of important service to our fellow human beings.
Mm-hmm. And if you're lacking a little in your life, that's somewhere that you could probably, and it doesn't have to be in your career, it could be in your community, but it is definitely a very fulfilling component of my life. And if you feel like something is missing and you can't change your job or your career situation fast enough, figure out a way to go serve others, and everything else will fall into place.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So we're getting to the end of our time, and what I like to do is ask for a tip of the day. So I'm putting you on the spot. We're going to have this short video and then come back with Angie's tip of the day.
Okay. I'm going to say know your core values. And the reason I'm going to say that is because we've talked a lot about that from a company perspective or a job search perspective. But if you really do want to design a career in life that you love, all of it is rooted in knowing your core values, because then you have a really strong, clear, well-articulated foundation with which to drive all future decision making.
That
Mic
I
drop.
have to write it down. Mic drop. Yep. And normally I would say thank you for joining us, blah blah blah. But we've got a little tangent here. Core values. So, like, what are core values?
Ooh.
Don't kill somebody. I guess that would be a core value, but
or a commandment, whichever one you want to look at that as. But
right.
So
let's just plant a little seed here of core values, because one of the things that I think is that what most people do is they are very busy at work. They then get home, they get very busy making food to eat, and then they veg in front of Netflix for 5 hours, and then they go to bed, and then they get up a couple hours later and go to work. And that is really not conducive for figuring out your core values. I think you need to be able to like find a tree to sit under or a river to sit beside, or that's for me is like, and just be with ourselves. But in our society, we don't want to be with ourselves only. Like we always want to be in a crowd or a party or watching TV or something. And so we just don't let that little voice start, talking to us or having a conversation with it.
So I love that I get the bonus. I'm very like action and outcomes oriented as a coach. So I love that you gave me the option, or the opportunity to not only just give the inspiration, but then give the actual activity after it. So I'm going to tell you kind of what core values are, but also I'm going to give you a quick tip, everybody out there, on how you can start defining your own. So this is what I bent down to grab. These are our core values here at Career Benders. And basically these 6 words are what I hope you will feel and experience when you engage with us. And so they are the elements that drive everything that we do. So if we are going to design an event, we want to make sure, hey, are we designing this in an approachable way that's going to help people build confidence, but it's also going to be fun, for instance? Or what I tell people when they're job searching is I'm like, hey, we're going to make this suck as little as possible. Maybe we can make it fun a little bit too. So core values are let's say the emotions or elements that are at your very, very root, the most important things to you. And so if you want a little fun tip on how to identify yours, you can go to Google and you can type in list of core values, and you will find websites that have lists of 50, 100, 200 core values. Literally everything from integrity to approachability. I mean, it's like all the adjectives. And what you can do is start striking out the ones that don't resonate immediately with you. So if you pick a list of 100, go through and just knee-jerk reaction, cross off the ones you're like, nope, not top, not top, not top. And you'll probably end up with like 24 left. And then from there, you can whittle that down to, I think 4 to 7 is a good number of the core values that you want to drive your life. And then you have that, and they might shift a little as things progress in your life or priorities change. However, for the most part, they're going to be a pretty set of core values. And then when you go look at an employer, you can say, oh wow, 3 of their 5 are the same as 3 of mine. These guys have it if they actually embody those. So there you go. Tip of the day is define your core values, and that's a starting point on how to do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Angie. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of this with us. In the description is a link to the Super Stack. You've got a few days to get it. Don't wait. Don't hesitate, because Angie's going to change your life.
Oh, thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me. This was a fun conversation.
Good. I'm glad. And thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.